So, all right, here's where I want to start then. Let's go back to the first day ever that Danny Pessy was in summer sales. So go back to whenever that was. How old were you? Where were you? Who were you with? How did you get there? And then, like, most importantly, what was the feeling that you had knocking that first neighborhood, attacking that first neighborhood?
Yeah, so it was 2000. I got recruited in 2008 for the 2009 summer in Seattle. I didn't know it was all door to door. I thought it was going to be like a vendor. My buddy kind of like spun it a little bit on what the opportunity was. I was from LA, so no one's ever heard of this. So I get my wisdom teeth removed the day before, and I drive up to Seattle, and I show up, and it's an office full of like strict LDS return missionaries. And I show up with me and my boys who are like dubstep, like bros, party animals. And we're in this office full of the super Molly Mormons. And we are like, what the hell did we get into? And so I remember walking in, seeing all these guys. I'm like, wow, these guys look like angels. All these blonde haired, blue eyed Mormon dudes. And I'm like, what the hell is this? So I go out knocking my first day. We're in one of the richest neighborhoods in Seattle, Washington. And I get dropped off in these $1 million homes. And my manager, Ace, at the time, who like recruited me, I shadowed him for 3 doors. I had no pitch. I was given I was given the contract and a folder, and was said, shadow me. So we knocked 2 doors. The first 2 were not home. Third door, it was a one-legger. It was a lady, and she was talking to us through the door and the glass on her door. And she's like, my husband's not home, but come around 5 or 6 and talk to him. And so that was all that she said. And then the guy I was shadowing was like, perfect. That's a deal. Go and close it at 6 o'clock. I'll see you tonight at 9 p.m. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, see ya. And then just left me. And I was like, what the hell is going on here? So that was my first day. No real training. Didn't really have any pitch whatsoever. And I was like, what did I get myself into? And
Dude, as you think about that day, could you have ever imagined that day would have evolved into the career that you've had since then? That's crazy.
no way. I was going to be on Saturday Night Live. So I had all the stuff lined up. There's a trajectory to get onto that. And that was my end all goal, was to use this, make money, buy training sessions with the team, with like the studios and stuff. Like there's like theaters you can go perform at, and it costs a good chunk of money to get up to that level of being trained. But I knew exactly what to do, what classes to take, whose palms to grease. I was doing auditions for like movies and plays and around LA. And dude, it just I was like, that was my thing. I was like super excited about, because my mom was on a show back in the 80s, and so like she had the in on it, and she knew all this stuff, and she really wanted that for me. And I was like, that's what I wanted to do. I was like voted best actor in high school. I did all the shows. I started a comedy club at my community college. So I was 100% committed to that. And this was just like a side gig. And I treated it like a show where I would go knock doors, and each door was its own performance. And so that's how I like convinced myself to keep doing it. It's like I tricked myself to pretending this is a show.
Well, then, so how long did it take knocking where you're like, okay, I've got a knack for this, and this is actually really good, and it's really good money. Like, this is, I think maybe I'm going to start going down this path instead. Like, how do you remember when you kind of figured that out?
Yeah, that was like year 2 or 3. But my first summer, it was a week where I went out and threw in 9 alarms in 1 week in Yakima, Washington. And that's where I was like, dude, I think I could do pretty good at this. Cause then we were making $200 a sale. And so 9 a week, that's $1,800. And I'm like, dude, that's what I made the previous summer as a camp counselor. I'm like, dude, I did that in a week. And so that's when I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to stick this out for the rest of the summer and really run it up. And basically that was the week when I saw some really good success. We got out of like the cookie cutter neighborhoods in Seattle and went to the more rural towns out in the middle of nowhere. And that's when I popped off. And that was like the learning lesson that I did, that I applied to all of my summer teams that I ran for 15 years, is we would hit the inner cities, get guys' skill sets up, and then when they're like polished, trained, we'd go hit the rural towns in the middle of nowhere and clean up house.
Yeah.
So that was the methodology that we used, and that's kind of what I took for the last, whenever I was running teams.
So you mentioned you've been doing this for, I guess this has been 15 years now. Can you tell me, like, what would
No,
be
18,
maybe the top
18. I ran
18
15
years?
Yeah, I ran 15 summer programs.
15 summers. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
What would you say some of your most valuable lessons that you've learned over all those years? Life lessons or sales lessons? What's the most important thing that you've learned doing this job?
There's a point of diminished returns in being a top performing sales rep. The Orange Machine did such a good job of like validating your success as a sales rep. And what it ended up doing is that fulfillment from being a top sales rep so many years basically never made me desire to like get out of that position and grow to, managing a team and a regional, because they incentivized the sales reps more than they did the regionals and all of that. And so like the sales reps got all the awards. Like I've got Rolexes, Breitlings, trophies, computers, like tons of prizes that I've won. And, that was the part that after 4 or 5 years of being a really good rep, I should have transitioned to really start figuring out how to be a leader and how to grow a team. And that was the biggest error that I had, because I spent too long in the rabbit seat of being the guy from the front. And it cost me a lot of, it cost me having a family. It cost me having a steady relationship. It cost me from being able to build something long term, because I had to sell to survive. And when you're in that position, you can't really build a team. And your overrides, there's hardly any overrides there to be able to have passive income to like support a lifestyle. So I was in this little rabbit hole where I was just like for years just not being able to get ahead. And it was tough. And I look up and there goes my 30s. I'm like, holy shit, what happened? And yeah, it's crazy.
So if I'm hearing you, then the lesson learned there, I would be like, for guys that are in that, it's like, have a plan on where you want to go. Otherwise you might end up seeing a lot of time pass by, having a great time, making a lot of money, right? It's an exciting life, but maybe missing some of the things that you otherwise would have been, what you thought you were going to do.
Yeah, there's the point where it's like, and this is how I tell people, if you're like the top rep for that long, it's kind of like being the college kid, the fraternity guy who still goes to high school parties.
Yeah.
It's like, bro, that's like, yeah, you're making a lot of money, but bro, you're weird, dude. Go build a team, go grow a region. Like, like you shouldn't be a top rep for that long. You need to transition and start growing things, because yeah, that was the part that I missed out on. And I'm very fortunate that I learned so much. Like, I think that of like all the trainers, I have spent the most time like in the doors. I don't think there's anyone that comes close to how long I've been knocking and running teams and being in the field. So I mean, I have that on my resume. Like, I don't
For
think there's
sure.
more qualified that does door-to-door training than myself. But I feel that that's, some can look at it as a flex, but it's also kind of sad. Like, dude, I look at all my friends who've grown businesses, like Doug Robinson Legacy, Max and Eric Nielsen from freaking Sunder. Those guys were in my region. And like, now they've grown these huge teams. And I'm like, damn, dude, what the hell was I doing? And so it's like Chris Lee ran Solgen, and then, JD Beck and all these guys running these huge companies. And it's like, dude, I was the top guy, but now they have something to show for it. I got these cool trophies and some stupid ass watches, but they're building enterprises. And it's like, damn, dog. Jordan Benning, like all these guys with big, freaking even McAllister, dude. Like, I remember him cranking growing up. And it's like, fuck, dude. I got hooked on the orange Kool-Aid for too long, dude. And it's like, I sobered up and I'm like, fuck, everybody got off the juice and they built these enterprises. And I'm sitting here with lots of shiny things and this unscrupulable, or like this big amount of debt that I accumulated from living this lifestyle and didn't really build much. It's like, fuck, dude. So yeah, that's the hard reality, man. A lot of people can't tell you, like, hey, at the end of this road, what it's going to look like. I'm like one of the guys that have lived it and can tell you. It's like, dude, if you do not learn how to build a team and get override, you will never get off this train of
Mm.
sell to survive.
Huge insights. And thank you for sharing that. I'd say, obviously we don't want to discount you too much because you are kind of like the nation's premier sales trainer at this point. So let's not, anybody listening, let's make sure we understand who we're talking to here, because Danny, I mean, you work with hundreds and probably thousands of reps every single year across the country. And you've been giving back and helping, you've been our company and trained our guys several times. Tell me what makes you passionate about training, because that's kind of your thing, is like helping other people figure out how to do what you've done so well. What is it about training that really drives you?
Yeah, so good question. And so I was trying to figure out my niche. Like, was it start up a dealer, go be an installer? That's never been my strength. And like a lot of times people try to fake the funk and do stuff just because it sounds exciting. Like being a CEO, like that's hard. Like, and you got to know what you're good at. So I was very good at selling ethically. I was very good at learning how to motivate myself. And so I'm like, dude, what's my value add? And right in the space, there's not a lot of people that have the experience that know how to do it. I mean, there's like two, maybe one. Me and Taggart are the main guys that are doing it the right way. And it's like, there was such a void in the space for people to learn how to do it the right way and get out there and train on it. So I saw that as an opportunity for me to come in and provide value to the space. And I look at this as not a money thing. It's more of like, I grew up in this town, this door-to-door industry, and this community that we have is a town. And it's provided me with a great lifestyle. When I started my coaching business, a lot of people have purchased my programs or hired me. And I look at that as like, they embraced me as an individual. And now it's my obligation to pass on what I've learned to that next generation, so that hopefully the next guy who's on the journey that I've been on, I can help them get there faster. So that at the end of the day, I can look back on my life and say I did something with my life rather than make a bunch of money and flex on everybody.
Yeah,
And so,
no, having
yeah.
that kind of impact on people is pretty powerful, to see your fingerprints across not only, I mean, every industry across the country is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
You're working with all these different guys, managers and trainers, right? They're responsible to make sure that their reps are competent, basically in three areas, right? They need to know and be trained on the product. They need to be trained on sales skills, how to present, how to close, how to actually make money, and then the mental side of the game. If
Yep.
I'm a new manager or a recruiter that I'm training a new guy, like, how do I get myself organized to train in a way that's going to have the highest impact on the people that I'm training?
So you got to have a freaking method, right? And so that's what I've been really focusing on, is because an issue that you have is you get a great sales rep and then they want to transition into management. How do they do that? And so what I've developed is a way to do it in person, but also duplicate yourself using technology. So the big thing that I focus is helping managers duplicate themselves by recording their training process, putting it into a system, and then forcing their people to go through that so they can learn, number one, from technology, which saves you time, because we didn't have this technology back when I started. There was no videos, there was no Netflix, none of that stuff. And so there was no Facebook back then. And so crazy. And so I've developed, number one, using technology, but then number two is that method. And when you bring in a new guy and you teach someone to be a leader, the skill set between a top rep and a top manager is extremely different. And so just because you were a top sales rep does not mean you're going to be a top manager. So the thing to focus on is when you transition to being a top manager is you have to be okay giving up that seat of power of looking like you're the top performer. And that's where a lot of people really get lost, because in sales, you get the hype of being the top performer. So that meets your needs. When you transition to management, you now have to be the guy to hype up the next wave of people. And the reps get so ingrained that they want to be that person. It's hard for them to genuinely pass that on, because then they don't want their reps to be better than them. So then they subconsciously suppress them so that they cannot perform to the top level, because they want to be like, oh, well, you never beat my record. It's like the right manager will have their guys do better than them. So the first thing is getting your head right in the spot of like the mentality of being able to, hey, these guys, you want them to be better than you, and that's okay. Second thing is you have to train them on their vision, mindset, and technique. Those are the three things that you focus on in bringing somebody into your organization. The vision of where you're going, the mindset so that you can continue on that journey, and then the techniques to use while you're going on that journey. So you have to have the same methodology when you're training reps so that you can duplicate it. The same process with every single individual reps. If you're like all over the place with how you train them, your results are going to be all over the place. You need something that's very organized. So get in and find out what their goal is on why they're trying to do this job. If it's to become a top solar sales rep, keep digging, because my reason why I want to do is I want to be a top actor. So my thing is for me, my hot button would be hey, dude, kill the door to door and then go buy a TV show. So if you told me that, that'd been like, boom. So I find out first for the vision is what the rep wants to do with their life and how this job can help them get there faster. Second is I teach them how to handle the massive flow of negativity that's going to be pushed towards them. And then teach them how to use that vision of where they want to be in 5 years to motivate them through this negative shit that they're going to get. And this is where the problem with new reps come, is they start getting more rejection than they've ever seen. And they don't know how to visualize the future of what they're trying to create properly. So they end up just focusing on the negative and quitting rather than being drawn to the future of that vision that they're trying to create. So that way you get that mindset dialed in so that whenever they get kicked, every single door, getting their ass kicked, they can continue to visualize them being on TV, being on show. And that's what I thought. I just remembered myself, dude, this is going to be such a good skit. This is going to be such a cool story I can tell of just getting yelled at, people calling the cops on me, letting the dogs out on me, pulling a gun on me, a dog biting my ass and I'm bleeding and I keep knocking. And dude, I just remember all of these things, and that's the vision that held me. And I got very lucky because no one, my managers didn't intentionally teach me that. I just had a very strong why, and that's why I stuck it out. But now you can duplicate that by teaching them and getting very clear on the reps and what they want to create. And then the technique, that's the last part. That's the trifecta, is you have to have the same script for every single rep. Every rep says the exact same thing. And if you really want to scale results, everyone has to say the same thing so that they all get the same problems. And then you can overcome those problems and you can able to teach them. Like if you ever train somebody and they're like, I just keep getting the customer saying like blank. And like, why the hell is your customer saying that? I've never gotten that. It's because they're not all the same script. And so that's part of managing. It's not leading. That's management, is you have to manage the reps to all have the same process so that you can continually tweak that process so that this way it's a smooth thing and you can scale. Everyone says the same thing. They get the same problems and then they all overcome them the same way. And then you end up getting the same results. That's where you can't scale your organization. If you're wondering why you're not growing, it's because everybody else is doing their own agenda, their own pitch. And then you wonder why you can't scale. It's because this manager says it this way, this other manager says it this way. You recruit, he then goes to a meeting, here's how he does it, and everyone's confused, and then boom, it's shambles. You got to get on the same page.
So let's go on out on the doors, right? You got everybody hopefully using a similar talk track, a similar script. What are the most common mistakes from a sales technique that reps make that cause them to not have success on the doors? I know that's a very broad question. There's a lot of different answers, but I'm wondering if you have one or two things that if a rep is listening, it's like, this is something I need to be looking at.
The easiest one is just your appearance. Like you got to look the part. So if it doesn't help you, it hurts you. So that's number one. And number two, you have to get animated in your hook. What I did so well was I would hook these people right at the beginning with animation and storytelling. The biggest problem you get when you knock on the door is the customer's attention span. The attention span is the biggest objection you're going to deal with. Why? Why is that? Is because this phone has destroyed people's attention span. So you are now competing with TikTok, Kim Kardashian, Google ads. That is your competition. And so you need to realize that. What's happening is people are using sales pitches that worked 10, 15 years ago, but 10, 15 years ago, the average attention span of an American was much longer. So now, because of the way technology's changed, attention spans are lower and your process isn't going to work right off the bat. No one's listening 90% of the time. So how do you really get them to listen is you have to hook them with this amazing story or question amplified by body language and facial expressions and creating curiosity. And if you can create curiosity and then get them to buy in to the animation, you've got them hooked, and then they'll actually hear what you're saying. 90% of the time, everyone says the right thing, but they're not listening. So you've got to have the right hook. That's the best piece of cheese you can get right now.
Now, and where that's going to end up leading to is getting into question-based selling. How do you define question-based selling, and why is it so effective? Because it has a lot to do with what you're talking about there.
Yeah, it's because questions are effective because of where the market's going with customers' attention span. The talking that you're doing, they're not effing listening. They're not listening to you. They're not paying attention. So you got to get them to pay attention by having a combination of more questions based in your sales process. So what ends up happening, you go through this long spiel and you probably said your script word for word, but guess what? It doesn't land because they're not listening to you. So that's the thing that reps don't understand is you really have to get it involved. Selling isn't a telling sport. It's an engagement sport. So you got to get them engaged. And so that's why you want to get as many questions as you can in your process. The reason why reps are afraid of questions is because in their mind, they know what the script is, but they don't know what's in the customer's mind. So they're afraid to ask because they don't know what's going to come out. And that's an unknown variable, which causes them to be insecure. So then because they're insecure because they don't know what the customers are going to say, they stick to what they know. But what they know is killing them because the customer doesn't know, or the customer doesn't care what you know. They care what they know. So if you're, and this is, going down a little rabbit hole here, but that's why it's so important to continue to get a glimpse into what's going on in the customer's mind. Because the customers are not wrong. They just don't understand. And so if they're rejecting you and they're not listening and they keep giving you these objections, you can't get appointments to sit because they don't know what the hell you're talking about. So that's why it's so important to continue to ask them questions. And so my golden rule is watch their eyes. Watch where their eyeballs go in the process. And if they look at other directions, that means that's where their thought process is. So you can literally see their thoughts based on their tonality, based on their body language and the directions of their eyes. So if you catch their eyes gleaming and going somewhere else, hook them back in with a question. So if you're watching this right now, that'd be a huge takeaway is if you see your customers look somewhere else after you've done after you've spoken and like said some talk tracks and they look somewhere else, ask them a question, get them back into your process.
I love that. So you set up an appointment, or maybe you're still on the door or whatever, or you're trying to set up an appointment, you're on the door. We're trying to engage them. Let's talk about creating a problem as a way to engage or as a way to hook. I think a lot of times a rep, particularly new reps, are going to want to just start telling about this awesome solution to a problem that we as a rep know the customer has, but has not been identified by that customer yet. So talk to me about the importance of creating problems in order to get people to listen to you.
That's the hook. So the problems, and like people say, what's a hook? Like that's the intro. The intro is a big problem. So you need to have the same problem on every single doorstep. The reason why that is so that you can continue to embellish this story to make it customers like in the neighborhood hear about it. Okay. Because if you're saying one thing, this guy goes to the freaking Facebook group, says that your presentation's all off. It throws off the whole thing. So what you need to do is you have to have one problem. And then you need to have one documentation validating that problem. So whatever your problem is, find a news article stating the validity of that problem. And you can do that in any industry. Is documentation beats conversation. So if you see me with my slicks, the things that I sell on my website, those are assisted selling slicks to help you illustrate that problem that you're creating. And so I'll find wherever neighborhood I'm in, if I'm selling in California, the big wildfires, the first thing I would do is print out an article saying that SCE is getting sued for the wildfires. Hey, I don't know if you heard, Jared, but like, did you remember the big fires that happened 2 or 3 weeks ago? Yeah, there's a big class action lawsuit that's happening with that. Are you participating in that lawsuit?
I had not heard about that yet.
Okay. An attorney didn't reach out to you and tell you about what's happened?
Not yet, man. We've just been trying to keep things together.
Got it. In terms of like the damage from the wind, because you heard about all that stuff happening and what it caused, right?
Well, the whole thing's a disaster.
It's a big disaster. And so what's happening is there's a lawsuit going on. And I don't know if you're participating. Here's the link that you can go and participate in the lawsuit. But basically, they're blaming SoCal Edison for not preparing for it. And there's a huge lawsuit that's happening that's going to get hit with SoCal Edison. And so because of that lawsuit happening, they're going to start raising rates to cover the big bill they have to pay to cover the lawsuit. So a lot of customers don't want to have to get hit twice with, number one, damages from a storm, and then number two, increase in electricity rates because of their fault. The same thing happened with PG&E up north. When those fires happened, they got hit with a $2 billion lawsuit. And because of that lawsuit, they raised the bill literally the next month on their customers 20%. So you think they paid for the lawsuit? The clients did. So now the people in this neighborhood are getting smart. They don't want to pay for the lawsuit. So what they're doing is they're buying their power from someone else, and that's why we're here. We're a new utility provider that sells power at a cheaper rate, and we're seeing which homes qualify if they want to participate in not paying for these new raises because of the lawsuit. So that's my job, is to see if you qualify for this new one. Not everybody does, but that's my big thing is I don't know if you're like a big fan of SoCal Edison and you have stock in them, where that if they raise everybody's rates, you make a good ROI. But most people don't, and they'd prefer to make savings. And so that's why we're here, and we got to see. And then that's,
and so you go on, we've created this problem that just leads right into a solution.
Yep. You see how I tied it in there?
It's perfect. Now, a lot of times though, rep will, once they've done that so well, and then it's almost immediate. So all I got to do is get your information. I'm going to set up a time to come over. And it's like, well, hold on. We still need to build a little bit of value here. What needs to happen before we try to transition to get that closed, whether we're on the door or in an actual house trying to close that deal? How do we make sure that we don't get ahead of ourselves there and take the time that that customer needs to have the value built in the solution that because again, building value is problem solution, right? We're just rehashing that problem and reiterating different ways in which that problem's going to get solved with our product. What other things do you keep in mind as you're trying to build value and make sure that the customer's pacing with you before you try to close the deal?
So the deal is a steak. The steak needs to be cooked well done for it to sit, right? And so how do you know if your steak's well done? You don't. And there you have to look for a couple clues. The clues I look for is if you've done your process right, the customers will ask, how do you qualify? How do we get this? They'll start asking questions. They'll start doing buying language. And as soon as I get some engagement or indicators of interest from the customer, I'll try to move them from the doorstep to a different part of the property where I'll point to the door or their meter. That's the next thing, is once you get them off the doorstep, they're paying attention more and they're listening, and you can repeat your process so it lands. So that's one of the things. As soon as you get some interest, move them off the doors. I was very animated, and my big rule of thumb is motion creates emotion. And if for new reps, if you can get them off the doorstep looking at their meter or looking at their property, like that's the way to really get them to listen. And so that's the next step, is once you've hooked them, you've got them excited. You can't just go for the kill. You got to cook it. So cook your steak a little bit more by getting them 2 to 3 points of value. And so in my mind, I'm thinking checkpoints, value or urgency. So those are the things that I'm doing. Is in my head, I'm like, okay, so I got the hook. Now what's my value prop? Okay, cool. Well, now I got to build a little bit of urgency. Cool. Well, we're only allowed to do a couple properties out here, because the problem is if everybody goes solar, then there's nobody to pay for the sorry, it's been a second. Which one? So that's why I put I can't do everybody out here in this neighborhood, because if everybody went solar, it would fry the inverters. So in this zip code, it caps the people at a certain percentage, so that after that percentage, nobody can get solar, because if everybody's producing at noon, then the inverters in the neighborhood, too much electricity gets backfilled onto the grid and it blows up and it can't maintain it. So there's only a certain percentage of homes out here that can go solar. So that's why we're out here. Everybody that's smart is jumping on board with it, and they're getting grandfathered in at that rate. And then you think anybody above that, they're SOL. There's nothing they can do. So they're going to end up paying for all the people that go solar. So the cool part about what I do, Jared, is I love my position, because I don't have to twist your arm. When people are going solar, whether you put the panels on the roof or you don't. If you put the panels on the roof, you get the savings. If you don't, your bill goes up to cover the savings of the people that went solar.
Yeah.
So the cool part is, Jared, you're going solar regardless if you put it on your roof or not. And so that's why I love my position. Is my job is hey, before this window closes, a couple people who are smart and proactive, which looking at you, I can tell you're, a pretty sharp guy. When you go through the presentation with my closer, Tyler McAllister, he'll explain to you how it works. And if it makes sense, people do it. And that's what I love about my job. It's easy because I know you're going to do it anyway. Whether you get the panels from me or not, unfortunately, everybody's going to be doing this one way or another.
Can be doing it either way. All right. So that moves into the close then, right? You've done that setup. We move into the close. How do we transition now, keeping buying pressure down? A lot of times the rep, it's like everybody clenches up. It's kind of the whole breath of like, all right, is this going to work? Am I ready or not? How do we move that transition? How do we move into that close, keeping it nice, even keel, same pace, same tone as where we've been during the rest of our talk?
Now, is this a close for the set or a close at the table, closing on a proposal of solar? Because we've been going through the set this whole time.
Sure. I mean, the principle's the same either way. Let's move into the house. Let's move into the house because I think the door's probably easier to transition and get that appointment. Let's go into the house. I'm a closer at this point. I've gone through and I've essentially gone through the same process, right? I've still gone through and I've created a problem. I've offered this solution. I've built value, but now it's time where we got to get these docs signed. We got to schedule a site survey. What do I need to do to make sure that I'm not dropping a frog into boiling water here?
So the key to not being at the end where you think it's like this big yes or no is in the pre-frame when you come in from the set and you go to the table and then you communicate with the customer right off the bat your intentions. So it's called the intent statement. And how you can prevent closing discrepancy is the strength of your intent statement when you come into the house and you get down to business. Everybody comes in, oh, I like the pictures, yada, yada, yada. Then you sit at the table and you're like, okay, game time. And that's called setting the table. When you set the table and you bring out the steak, you want to make sure you have a plate, knife, and fork. So how you set the table is your intent statement. And that's the plate, the knife, and fork. You don't want to eat steak on a piece of wood with your hands. And then you get to the close and you wonder why it didn't close. It's because, dude, you're sitting there eating steak with your hands instead of a plate, knife, and fork. You didn't set the table, dumbass. So what you do is you get to the table and your get down to business statement is telling them your intentions. Perfect. Well, the reason why I'm here today is blank. And my goal is, if this makes sense, we're going to submit the application and get the process started if it makes sense. Sound good to you?
Yep, that sounds good.
Okay, so now I've just tied them down that if it makes sense. So then if they tell you no at the closing table, that means it doesn't make sense. So then you need to continue to make it make sense and tie them down to, Jared, you told me earlier if it makes sense, you do this we would move forward with it. So if you're not moving forward with it, then that means there's something that doesn't make sense in this process. Because Jared, what I love about my job is I've done this a long time, and I realize that when people don't want to go forward with this, there's two reasons why. Number one is they don't understand it, or number two, they don't qualify. That's the only reason why people won't go forward with solar. So we don't even know if you qualify yet because there's a couple things that can prevent us from going forward regardless if you want it or not. But at this point, we don't know that. So it tells me you don't understand how this works. So let me ask you, what is the big thing that you don't understand about this process? And I apologize for that. Like, I'm kind of new. So where along this does this not make sense for you?
Yep.
And then I'll tie them back down to that. That's what it is.
And what's great with that intent statement too is when you say, if this makes sense, we're going to move forward. Along the way, as you're explaining things, you're asking those kind of questions. Does that make sense? What questions do you have about that? Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. That makes sense. They've already gone along with what they've already agreed to in the beginning. So it just ties them in, each time you go further and further down down the process there.
Yeah, there's just a couple things like the hardest part about this job is setting. Like, closing's easy. Like, dude, we literally, like, for the guys that came from Alarms, this is just a switch over. Like, when I would switch customers over from ADT to Vivint, I would raise their bill $20 or $30 a month. I would raise it. With this, we're lowering people's bills. So it's an easy deal. So it's like, don't overcomplicate it. There's a couple rules to follow by. hold them with the intent statement, hold them down, build value. You can't just go off of the savings. You have to build value to get them excited about going forward with this. And then if you do that correctly with compiling urgency and the value that you build, customers should eat this up all day. It's a no-brainer. The reason why they don't is you just confuse them. Like, it's simple. It's easy. You're switching one bill for another. Don't overcomplicate it. Tell them the perks, go through why they need to do it today instead of waiting, and then you're golden.
Let's move to the mentality, to the mental side of this job. Can a rep develop mental toughness and resiliency, or is that something that somebody has to be born with?
No, dude, I was a spoiled, rotten little growing up. I was lazy. I got a Range Rover with 22-inch rims and subwoofers for my 16th birthday. Everything I wanted, I got. I was spoiled, and I was like, I had the whole world. My dad had a company. I was going to inherit the company. I was set. And so, perfect example of what you can build. Okay. And so I initially was lazy and I did not have a good work ethic. I developed this work ethic because of the culture of my team in the competition, and the gamification of the culture helped me develop this work ethic. It's the gamification is the sauce that really can help companies and teach people how to have a good work ethic. You put somebody in a sports-like atmosphere competing against other people and watch the work ethic. In sports, I was a dog. I played hard as crap, and I loved basketball, and I was a 3-sport athlete, and I played super hard at everything I did. So I knew inside of me the potential to work hard was there, but it had to be something I liked. Okay. I didn't like getting rejected, but I liked outselling my friends. So I spun it in my head and I bought into competitions. My goal was to beat all of the Mormons by year 1. We had two sides. We had the bad boys versus the return missionaries. So the bad boys, we were going to outsell these Mormons. And so, eventually I got 5th out of 40 reps in my office. And so I ended up beating most of the return missionaries. A couple of them beat me, but I kept sticking it out and I used the competition. That's the only thing, Jared, that kept me there, was the competitive side of this job. It wasn't how much money I made. It was how many deals did I sell and who was I beating on the leaderboard. And that's what this industry has gotten away from, is they recruit on money rather than the gamification. And that's why you're seeing so much fraud. That's why you're seeing so much complaints about this, is because we got lazy and we recruit on the wrong thing. And then when the money disappears, you wonder why your reps quit. It's like, because, bro, you sold them on how much money you made. I wasn't sold on how much money I made. I was sold on, hey, I want to beat these guys.
Yeah.
That's why you don't see me talking about money. Like, you don't see me ever talking about how much money I got or any of this crap, because I don't care about that. It's a game. And it's like, dude, I don't want anyone to beat me at this game. And so that you run into problems when you start talking about money and flexing all these nice things. I got it. I don't talk about it because that doesn't mean shit. Like, bro, you outsell me. That's what I care about. Oh, I got $100,000, but this guy outsold me. Like, I don't care about the money. Like, bro, don't let him beat you. Get out there and outsell his ass. So that's my big thing that got me going to where I'm at. And that's why I like selling ethically, because I'm not money motivated.
Yeah.
Money doesn't motivate, because remember, I'm inheriting all this money. Like, I know I'm going to be fine. Like, Pessys, we are inherently going to be fine genetically, like the family lineage. Like, this is all in my head. I don't know if it's true or not, but like, dude, we are going to be fine. So don't make decisions based on money. Make it on how you can make an impact so that you can like live a fulfilling life and not have to cut corners on your ethics to make money, Well,
and I like what you said earlier too, is going all the way back to just talking about the attention span that people have in today's world compared to where it was even 15 years ago. We live in this world of on-demand culture where if I want something, I order on Amazon and it could be there the same day. I can watch a million things on demand TV or whatever it is, but it's just always now. And so there's just this no need of patience anymore. And I think that hurts resiliency, right? Because growing up, if you were in a situation where you had to, if you had to earn if you wanted to wear cool shoes with the cool kids at school and you had to you had to buy it yourself, then you had to figure out a way to earn that money. Right. Yep. And there was this delayed gratification. There was this willingness or necessity to sometimes fail or have something get in the way of you getting exactly what you want, and being okay with that, and just kind of figuring out, what do I need to do to get to where I want to go? And so having vision, I think, is a big part of that. For me, I think resiliency is something, if you're an adult that you don't feel like you have it, one of the things that you can do is to purposefully delay gratification. Like, on purpose, don't use your phone. Don't order something online, even though it is very, very convenient. Make yourself actually go to the store. You're going to save a lot more money this way too, and not waste your money on certain things. But like, make yourself actually go to the store, actually go and do your own yard work once in a while, instead of hiring somebody else to do it. But like, forcing yourself to slow down and live and work out things is going to develop that patience. That's such a big part of being resilient. I think that's just kind of the other half of what you were talking about, of like having a vision and having a why of why you'd want to do this. In your case, it was being competitive and wanting to be at the top of the list. Yeah. I think that people, if you don't have that resiliency or mental toughness, you can train yourself to do it through your vision and through, in my opinion, by forcing yourself not to make life as easy as it is. Because it's probably the easiest time in history that anybody's ever lived, right? Everything is spoon-fed for us.
And that's one of the tricks that as sales reps, we're very fortunate. If you want something, set a goal that you're going to go out and you're going to sell blank by this time, and then you reward yourself. So that's the things that I would do, is to really get myself going. I wanted this. I said, okay, no, I got to go out and hit this week. If I hit this week, then boom, on Sunday, I can buy it. So that was my goal. And the other thing is, if you're spending too much money, that means you're not working. You can't spend money if you're at a closing table. So go sell more deals and watch how the bread stacks up. If you're running out of cash, go get in front of customers. You cannot go on Amazon if you're at a closing table. You cannot spend money if you're with a customer. I love summertime because I have a spending habit, of course, right? I spend more than I freaking should, right? So sometimes I spend more to put myself under pressure to go out and make some more cash, right? So there's little tricks you can do to figure out what motivates your ass to get out there and work. But using that as a way, I love summer because I knew all summer I'd stack cash because I'm not spending it on stupid stuff. So get out there and put your fire to the freaking wall, or whatever the hell the saying is. Put some fire under your ass. Get it close. You ain't spending money there.
Okay, a couple more quick questions. What's 2025 looking like for you, Danny? What are you up to this year?
I have been focused a lot on training, right? And the issue we're having in our industry is, because market's getting harder, gratification is being pushed out and people are quitting more and faster, and production on the whole industry is starting to go down. And it's been down all 2024. This year, we need new people to come into the space. So my goal is to find a way to help get people who are not in the space to come in and weed them out organically without having to spend a ton of time and money. I've developed a couple new products since things were going down in the market. I've been studying ways to help companies filter out and bring on new people. And so that's what I think this year is about, is, if you're watching this, is you got to get fresh blood in the door. Stop going for vets. Stop going for other reps at other companies. Okay. They'll be there, but go find new people, go find realtors, go find other industries and bring them into our space, and then get them trained up and selling, because new blood is the lifeblood of this industry. There's a lot of bad apples in here now. They're lazy because they got used to getting paid so much, and they're going to continue trying to make that much per deal. And that's where you're going to run into problems. People need to innovate. Okay. You're not going to go out there and make 10, 20, 30, 40, $50,000 a deal anymore. Okay. You got to start cutting that down. And the way you do that is you start making more margin for the company by bringing in new talent. The company's got to start making money. Everybody's beating up these EPCs and they're stuck holding the bill. Oh, you switched, you left the industry, and oh, what about all these chargebacks? You ain't paying them back. It's like, dude, the companies are stuck with that. So that's what I'm saying. It's just get new blood in the door, and you got to.
So your program is going to help managers do that. Help managers recruit. Help managers train.
Managers, regionals, and company owners. So right now, one of my good clients has transitioned into virtual, and they've built an extremely impressive, probably the best in the industry, to bring in fresh blood from online recruiting or from online applicants. And so that's a product that I'm going to be unleashing at SolarCon to help bigger organizations. It's like a 10 to 20, 30, $40,000 per month spend. So it's for some big apples, but I have some cheaper ones that I've been working on for guys to be able to fit it in their price range to help bring on new people from Indeed and these other sources. So that's my big focus, is how to bring on new people to your company, how to train them properly. Because a lot of times is you bring in new people and then you drop them off to your managers don't know what to do. They don't know how to train them, and then they quit because it's a bad experience. So that's all part of what I'm really focused on this year, because there's enough gurus, there's enough sales trainers out there, but it's only so many people to talk to before you're like, all right, dude, well, I'm out of money and I can't go to these events anymore. We need to get some new blood in the space. That's the focus. If you're listening to this, get some new blood. Find some people who are working at a dead-end job, bring them into this, teach them how to do it.
Love it. Cool. All right. Last question. One more value add. What is one piece of advice that you followed that you wish you hadn't, or what's one piece of advice that you ignored that you wish you had listened to?
You can out earn your spending. Doesn't work. The very cute Grant Cardone, but that didn't work. And for our particular industry, very, very difficult. And the other one was, you make more money as a top rep than you do running a team. That was the thing I learned my first year, which was kind of ingrained in me, that like I could just keep selling and I didn't have to stress about other people. That was probably the worst thing I could hear, because I later found out the reason why he said that is because he was embarrassed because his team fell apart and quit on him, and he wasn't good enough as a leader to manage. And so he wanted to save face in front of me. So he made that defense story up to justify him not being a good manager.
Interesting.
And so I followed into that narrative for too long and didn't care about recruiting. And that's what prevented me from really getting after it early on in my career.
Getting into that growth mindset. Well, dude, hey, I appreciate your time. You've given so much here. I'm excited to go watch this back and cut it up and have all these little bits that we can share with our teams and put out on the internet and stuff like that. But, it's always a pleasure talking to you, man. You are so full of experience, and the way that you present is just so clear. It's engaging. It's fun to watch. You're entertaining. You're fun. I really appreciate all your insight and sharing all this with us. And I hope that all the listeners can appreciate this, and you guys can apply some of these little nuggets, right? It's always just these little nuggets each day that you apply that's going to make the difference. So, Mr. Pessy, thank you very much for being with us. Listeners, thank you for being with us on the Fusion Power Podcast. We will see you next time. Peace.
Peace.